Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajanarandana. Yashodanandana Bhajanarandana. Yamana Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Okay. Jaya Mr. Pad, Paramahansa, Purajikacharya, Ashtotirtha, Shri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Purajikacharya, Ashtotirtha, Shri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 17th day of June 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 14 entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. Text number 21, page 584. Got it? Okay. Arjuna Vacha Kairlingai Stringunane Tan Adito Bhavati Prabho Kamachara Katam Chaitangs Chingunan Ativartate. Arjuna Uvacha Kairlingai Stringunan Etan Adito Bhavati Prabho Kamachara Katam Chaitangs Tringunan Ativartate. Arjuna Vacha Kairlingai Stringunan Etan Adito Bhavati Prabho Kamachara Katam Chaitangs Tringunan Hativartate. Go ahead. Arjuna Vacha. Kailingaistreen gunane tan. Atito bhavati prabho. Kamachara katham chaitangs. Treen gunan hadivartate. Arjuna Vacha, Arjuna said, Kai, by which lingai, symptoms, treen, three gunan, qualities, etan, all these, atitaha, having transcended, bhavati, is, prabho, O my Lord, kim, what, acharaha, behavior, katam, how, cha, also, etan, these, treen, three, gunan, qualities, ativartate, transcends. Translation. Arjuna inquired, O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior? And how does he transcend the modes of nature? Purport. In this verse, Arjuna's questions are very appropriate. He wants to know the symptoms of a person who has already transcended the material modes. He first inquires of the symptoms of such a transcendental person. How can one understand that he has already transcended the influence of the modes of material nature? The second question asks how he lives and what his activities are. Are they regulated or non-regulated? Time out. We're on page 584. You got a mask? Okay, you have to put the mask on. Go ahead. Oh, you need help with that? You need some help with that? Okay. Okay. Are they regulated or non-regulated? Then Arjuna inquires of the means by which he can attain the transcendental nature. That is very important. Unless one knows the direct means by which one can be situated always transcendentally, there is no possibility of showing the symptoms. So all these questions put by Arjuna are very important, and the Lord answers them. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unminatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is a three-part question. What are the symptoms? How can you recognize someone who is transcendental to the modes? We've heard about these three modes, the qualities of one who's in different modes, the activities of one who's in the different modes, the destination of one who dies with each mode predominant. And basically our whole process is to move up the modes, come to be the predominant mode of goodness by the activities of bhakti yoga, and then to transcend them and come to the state of pure goodness. This pure goodness state is known as the Vasudeva state, in which Vasudeva, or Krishna, is manifest. That's why it's called the Vasudeva state. So Arjuna is asking on our behalf, how can one recognize in others and in oneself that you're moving in the right direction, or you've transcended the modes? And how is that? How are those qualities or symptoms manifest in your behavior? And most important of all, what's the means, the method by which we can transcend? So let's go on now. Krishna will systematically answer those questions. The first two are answered in the next 4 verses. Shri Bhagavana Vacha Prakasham cha pravrittim cha Mohameva cha Pandava. 585. 585. Nadveshti sampravittani Nanavrittani kankshati Udasina vadasino. Okay, time out. Prabhu, help him with it. Get the book. Page 585. He has a disability there. Page 585. You got it? Okay, good. All right, we'll start on 23 there. Udasina vadasino Gunaryo Navichalyate Guna Vartanta Ityevam Yovatishtati Ningate Samadukha Sukha Swasta Samaloshtashmakanchanaha Tulya Priya Priyo Dhiras Tulya Nindatma Sangstutihi Manapamanayos Tulyas Tulyo Mitradi Pakshayo Sarvaramba Parityagi Gunatita Sauchyate. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. Purport. Arjuna submitted 3 different questions, and the Lord answers them one after another. In these verses, Krishna first indicates that a person transcendentally situated has no envy and does not hanker for anything. When the living entity stays in this material world, embodied by the material body, it is to be understood that he is under the control of one of the 3 modes of material nature. When he is actually out of the body, then he is out of the clutches of the material modes of nature. But as long as he is not out of the material body, he should be neutral. He should engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord, so that his identity with the material body will automatically be forgotten. When one is conscious of the material body, he acts only for sense gratification. But when one transfers the consciousness to Krishna, sense gratification automatically stops. One does not need this material body, and he does not need to accept the dictations of the material body. The qualities of the material modes in the body will act, but as spirit soul, the self is aloof from such activities. How does he become aloof? He does not desire to enjoy the body, nor does he desire to get out of it. Thus, transcendentally situated, the devotee becomes automatically free. He need not try to become free from the influence of the modes of material nature. The next question concerns the dealings of a transcendentally situated person. The materially situated person is affected by so-called honor and dishonor offered to the body, but the transcendentally situated person is not affected by such false honor and dishonor. He performs his duty in Krishna consciousness and does not mind whether a man honors or dishonors him. He accepts things that are favorable for his duty in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, he has no necessity of anything material, either a stone or gold. He takes everyone as his dear friend who helps him in his execution of Krishna consciousness, and he does not hate his so-called enemy. He is equally disposed and sees everything on an equal level because he knows perfectly well that he has nothing to do with material existence. Social and political issues do not affect him because he knows the situation of temporary upheavals and disturbances. He does not attempt anything for his own sake. He can attempt anything for Krishna, but for his personal self, he does not attempt anything. By such behavior, one becomes actually transcendentally situated. Om Jnana. Oh, we did that already. Sorry. Seems like a new start here. So these are these kind of qualities have been mentioned before. We've already been through the 12th chapter and other chapters in which these have been mentioned in various forms, but like having them all together here in one group is useful, certainly. Very wonderful. Krishna gives us that. There's a couple of verses here you may have noticed where the word tulya comes in 4 times actually. Tulya priya priyo diras tulya nindatma samstiti. Tulya means see equally. To see equally. The dear and the not dear, one who is dira, this word came up at the beginning when Krishna speaks about the process of transmigration of the soul. This is one of the first verses that devotees usually remember. Maybe you already memorized it. Dehinosmin yata dehe. Okay, you heard of it. So, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumanam yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. So Krishna gives a wonderful analogy here. I mean, not an analogy so much as just pointing out the reality of transmigration even in this one body. And his whole point here is he's trying to lift Arjuna out of the bodily concept of life, because his whole calculation is on the basis of, my friends and my teacher and my great grandfather Bhishma Dev are going to be killed and I'm going to be responsible. And so this is a horrible thing. In other words, he's thinking of their demise as the worst thing possible. But here Krishna is saying, no, nobody dies. You know, you've been transmigrating through babyhood and childhood and youth and old age. And naturally one gets another body at death. And the dhira, someone who is equipoised or sober-minded, he's not disturbed. So you, Arjuna, should be dhira. And the word comes up again in the Bhagavad Gita. And here's one of the places. So this dhira quality is a prerequisite, really, for liberation. Because the next verse, Krishna says, okay, I know that these souls are very dear to you, not only Dronacharya and Bhishma Dev, but there's so many cousins and brothers here on the other side. And this is going to be painful to you. You have to tolerate. Matra sparsha konteya shitoshna sukadukada. Agamapaino nitjas tam tatikshasvabharata. The word tatiksha means to tolerate. Matra sparsha means the touch of the senses with their sense objects. Sometimes it's pleasurable, sometimes it's painful. This is the way the material world works. Sometimes in the cold winter, you have to touch something cold, like a cold shower, and then you have to tolerate. And sometimes in the hot summer, you have to go and you cook in the kitchen, and you have to tolerate. So, and then the next verse is very important, because he says, Yam hinabdidiyante te purusham purusharshabha samaduka sukham dhiram somitatkaya kalpate. The same word there is used. If one wants liberation, the first prerequisite is to become dhira, or equipoised and tolerant amongst the dualities of this life. If you're always trying to increase your happiness with sense gratification and get away from the pain, and so your life is one of duality, you're not going to be liberated. Because those considerations will stay with you in your mind, and you'll have a whole bunch of unfulfilled desires and a whole bunch of fears that you die with, and that'll give you another birth. So, to avoid that, one needs to transcend the modes and become equipoised in all these dualities. And that's what Krishna is speaking about here. Mana apamanayos tulyas. Now this mana apamanayos, being equipoised in fame and praise and blame. You remember the verse, the key verse for how we can develop the taste for chanting Hare Krishna. Trinadapi Sunachena. Does it ring a bell? Okay, you'll get these down. This is like a key verse. It's so important that Lord Chaitanya, Krishna's verse say we should string it around our neck so that we never forget it. So what this verse says is Trinadapi Sunachena Tororapi Sahishrana Amanina Manadena Kirtani Eksadahari. This word mana comes in, amanina mana. So it means one should be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree. That one. One should offer all respect to others and respect none for oneself. In this attitude, one can chant a Hare Krishna mantra constantly. Now, why is that? Because you're in a position where you are not feeding the false ego. Being humble and a blade of grass means that you really feel your insignificance. That and we're very subject, to the way the material world, throws all kinds of curveballs at you, and nothing is sure. We're really helpless here. And the idea that we can control nature, I just heard something, or read a little news clip, that the Siberia, which has been frozen for so long, it's northern Siberia, they have a huge Arctic air, having a huge heat wave. just historic, 30, 40 degrees above what it's normally supposed to be in Fahrenheit. So there's a big problem there because, it's been frozen so long. They've built whole cities on the permafrost in the ground. If that permafrost melts, the cities come crashing down. They're going to have a whole lot of people who are refugees, moving around. I mean, who could imagine, But this place, we're sitting right next to the ocean here. I remember years ago, this was a while back, 2000, was it 2004 or something? That's like you were 2 years old or something. 1 year old? Okay. So you wouldn't remember, there was a huge earthquake off, there were several ones. There was off of Indonesia, caused a huge tsunami. It went all across the ocean and went on into Africa and things. And they showed, people had their little phones by then, and we saw some clips of that. It's just devastating. Suddenly the ocean rises up, and there's this big wave. Just imagine it coming over and then coming down Garnett Avenue, and 100,000 people were killed in various places, So this is we're sitting right off the coast here. There's a fault, So we're just like living obliviously. How many people really think of that during the course of each day, But that's the nature of the material world. So the only solution to it is to be in your own in a space where you're fixed in Krishna consciousness and you're not being whipped around by the heat and cold, pleasure and pain, And that's what happens if you're able to chant constantly. But we have to feel ourselves desperate to chant desperately. This is it's kind of a paradoxical benefit of Kali Yuga. In fact, it says, Kaling sabhajiyantyaya guna gyasada bhaginaha, that those who are real Aryans and know the real value of things, they worship this Kali Yuga. This Kali Yuga especially, because Lord Chaitanya came. Why? Yatra sankirtanenaiva sarvasvarto vilabhyate. Because in this Kali Yuga especially, just by Sankirtan, one can achieve all of one's spiritual goals. It's very easy. So, because we're so fallen, because the age is so disturbing, it's easy to call out to Krishna in great desperation. And that's what it takes, to feel oneself humble with a blade of grass and be more tolerant than a tree. That's described here. And not wanting any honor. Because if you say, it's possible to say, yeah, I'm pretty humble. I've been taking the humble position. And as far as tolerance goes, I got it covered. That's pride. It's not a manina. So you have to be free of any pride and really, to honor those who are honorable. So that's described here. In other words, it all fits in. If you can chant Hare Krishna successfully, without offense, you're going to be transcendental to the modes of nature. And to do that, amanina manadena trina napisinasya. So it all fits in here. Okay, let's see. So in these verses, there have been both of those questions have been answered. What are the qualities, the symptoms, and what are the activities? There are some of each of that in these 4 verses. And now, the key, like one of the probably the most famous and most key verse in the whole chapter. How does one get over the modes? And you probably guessed what it is. Pure devotional service. All right, let's do this important verse. Now, this is one we can memorize. You can memorize. Maybe not. You can try. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Purport. This verse is a reply to Arjuna's 3rd question: what is the means of attaining to the transcendental position? As explained before, the material world is acting under the spell of the modes of material nature. One should not be disturbed by the activities of the modes of nature. Instead of putting his consciousness into such activities, he may transfer his consciousness to Krishna activities. Krishna activities are known as bhakti yoga, always acting for Krishna. This includes not only Krishna, but his different plenary expansions, such as Rama and Narayan. He has innumerable expansions. One who is engaged in the service of any of the forms of Krishna, or of his plenary expansions, is considered to be transcendentally situated. One should also note that all the forms of Krishna are fully transcendental, blissful, full of knowledge, and eternal. Such personalities of Godhead are omnipotent and omniscient, and they possess all transcendental qualities. So if one engages himself in the service of Krishna or his plenary expansions with unfailing determination, although these modes of material nature are very difficult to overcome, one can overcome them easily. This has already been explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto Krishna at once surmounts the influence of the modes of material nature. This is the same verse that he referred to in the purport we read. Daivi Yeshuguna, this is 7:14. We can look at it afterward. To be in Krishna consciousness, or in devotional service, means to acquire equality with Krishna. The Lord says that his nature is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. And the living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme, as gold particles are part of a gold mine. Thus the living entity in his spiritual position is as good as gold, as good as Krishna in quality. The difference of individuality continues. Otherwise, there would be no question of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means that the Lord is there, the devotee is there, and the activity of exchange of love between the Lord and the devotee is there. Therefore, the individuality of two persons is present in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual person. Otherwise, there would be no meaning to Bhakti Yoga. If one is not situated in the same transcendental position with the Lord, one cannot serve the Supreme Lord. To be a personal assistant to a king, one must acquire the qualifications. Thus the qualification is to become Brahman, or freed from all material contamination. It is said in the Vedic literature, Brahmaiva san brahmapyeti. One can attain the Supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means that one must qualitatively become one with Brahman. By attainment of Brahman, one does not lose his eternal Brahman identity as an individual soul. So, such an important verse. This one is quoted very often. And there's, Krishna makes it very explicit, avyabhicharena, without fail. Vyabhichari means flickering and changing. There's a certain category of ecstatic symptoms, transient, they come and they go. But avyabhichari means steady, without deviation. One transcends the mode samatitya, transcending all the modes, and comes to the stage of Brahma Bhuta, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Now this, again, I mentioned this last night, this Brahma Bhuta platform is mentioned in the 18th chapter, a famous verse, even more famous than this. Brahma Bhuta prasanatma nashochati nakanchati. You know this one? Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. Mud. Yes, very good. See, learning. So what is that? That describes the state of in Brahma and prasanatma. Prasanatma is you're naturally joyful, because that's our state. Where we've lost it so long that it doesn't seem natural to us, but that's our natural state. And one doesn't lament, and one doesn't hanker. The hankering and lamenting are symptoms of the material state of mind. The Shudras, Shudras means those who are always crying. And Shochati, oh, woe is me. How can I get this? I can't pay that? She left me, whatever. So many things in this material world. So that's a symptom. And Kankshati means to aspire for material things and never have enough. So na shochati, na kankshati. If you're not lamenting, it means you're full. You don't feel you've lost anything. You've gained because you have Krishna. You have Krishna consciousness. And if you have Krishna consciousness, you don't feel the need for anything else. You feel satisfied. So it's a great boon. And that's the nature of Brahma Bhuta. And in that state, it says, one attains bhakti to me. Now, this whole thing here, you have Brahma Bhakti Yogena. by the process of bhakti yoga. But that bhakti yogena, that includes sadhana bhakti and vaidhi bhakti. That process brings you up over the modes. But in this verse in the 18th chapter, 1854, I believe it is, he's talking about real bhakti. It's not yoga. It's the literal exchange of loving dealings with Krishna. That's ultimately bhakti. And that goes on eternally. Bhakti yoga culminates in bhakti. That's the idea. But this is what this movement is all about. Prabhupada set it up, and he explains this on one tape, so that just to give us something to do in relation to Krishna. So that, we can live simply, but live, and at the same time have a program of Krishna consciousness, so we can stay, duties to perform, so in relation to Krishna, all day. And if we do it right, we'll gradually remember Krishna more and more during the day. And that will automatically transcend the modes, automatically give us a sense of peace and happiness, no matter what the externals are. That's the whole idea. So this is a very significant verse. Now, hear this interesting statement. To be in Krishna conscious or in devotional service means to acquire equality with Krishna. Now, that may be a little shocking if you don't read on. No. Quality means that we develop our natural transcendental qualities. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna, we're like a little drop in the ocean. We have the same chemical composition or the same qualities, but in minute degree. And because we're minute, we have the tendency to be overwhelmed by the material energy. But our natural position is to be situated in service to Krishna. There's another verse that's very famous that eventually you'll learn. This is in the teachings of Lord Krishna to Sanatana Goswami. Near the very beginning of his teachings, practically the first verse, Sanatana asks, who am I? What's my real identity? Because the first thing you learn is, well, I'm not the body, then who am I? So Lord Chaitanya answers in this famous verse. We're on page 589. Jivera swarupoi. So the first thing is the swarup, or the actual ultimate form and function of the jiva, is as Krishnera Nityadas, as an eternal servant of Krishna. That's like the theme song, a motto of the Hare Krishna movement. And then he goes on, Jivera tatasta shakti. We're Krishna's energy. Right? We learned that in the 7th chapter. We're the transcendental energy, para prakriti, but we're still prakriti or shakti. So what is the tata? The tata is the border between material and spiritual worlds. Example is the beach right out here. You got the ocean coming in, it covers and it uncovers. That part where sometimes covered, sometimes not, that's the tata, the border. So we're on that border eternally, meaning that we can be overwhelmed, depending on our own free will, by the material energy. If we turn our attention to the 3 modes of nature and with the enjoying mood, then we get covered immediately by Maya. And we can stay for many eons in that. If we stay, because our original position is to be, if we remain turning toward Krishna and working for his pleasure, then we stay in our constitutional position of Satchidananda. So the whole process is changing the quality of the energy that's influencing us. That's a statement from some purport. So when we do that, and if we do it unfailingly, as described in this book, this verse, then we'll be transcendental. We will transcend the modes and come to the state of Brahman, where we'll realize our equality, our spiritual equality with Krishna. He's the supreme Brahman, we're the infinitesimal Brahman, but we're both Brahman. And that's the theme of the next verse, which is the last verse in this chapter. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amitasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya kantikasya cha. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Purport. The constitution of Brahman is immortality, imperishability, eternity, and happiness. Brahman is the beginning of transcendental realization. Paramatma, the Supersoul, is the middle and second stage in transcendental realization. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate realization of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, both Paramatma and the impersonal Brahman are within the Supreme Person. It is explained in the 7th chapter that material nature is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord impregnates the inferior material nature with fragments of the superior nature, and that is the spiritual touch in the material nature. This is right at the beginning of this chapter. When Krishna says, I am Bija Padakpata, I am the seed-giving Father. When the living entity, conditioned by this material nature, begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises up to the Brahman conception of the Supreme. This attainment of the Brahman conception of life is the first stage in self-realization. At this stage, the Brahman realized person is transcendental to the material position, but he's not actually perfect in Brahman realization. If he wants, he can continue to stay in the Brahman position and then gradually rise up to Paramatma realization and then to the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many examples of this in Vedic literature. The 4 Kumaras were situated first in the impersonal Brahman conception of truth, but then they gradually rose to the platform of devotional service. One who cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman runs the risk of falling down. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated that although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman without going further with no information of the Supreme Person, his intelligence is not perfectly clear. Therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there is the chance of falling down if one is not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Vedic language it is also said, Raso Vaisa, Rasamye Vayam Labdhanandi Bhavati. When one understands the personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure, Krishna, he actually becomes transcendentally blissful. Taittiriya Upanishad 271. The Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, and when a devotee approaches him, there is an exchange of these 6 opulences. The servant of the king enjoys on an almost equal level with the king. And so eternal happiness, imperishable happiness, and eternal life accompany devotional service. Therefore, realization of Brahman or eternity or imperishability is included in devotional service. This is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. The living entity, although Brahman by nature, has the desire to lord it over the material world, and due to this, he falls down. In his constitutional position, a living entity is above the 3 modes of material nature, but association with material nature entangles him in the different modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Due to the association of these 3 modes, his desire to dominate the material world is there. By engagement in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, he is immediately situated in the transcendental position, and his unlawful desire to control material nature is removed. Therefore, the process of devotional service, beginning with hearing, chanting, remembering the prescribed 9 methods for realizing devotional service, should be practiced in the association of devotees. Gradually, by such association, by the influence of the spiritual master, one's material desire to dominate is removed, and one becomes firmly situated in the Lord's transcendental loving service. This method is prescribed from the 22nd to the last verse of this chapter. Devotional service to the Lord is very simple. One should always engage in the service of the Lord, should eat the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the deity, smell the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, see the places where the Lord had his transcendental pastimes, read of the different activities of the Lord, his reciprocation of love with his devotees, chant always the transcendental vibration, harekrishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and observe the fasting days commemorating the appearances and disappearances of the Lord and his devotees. By following such a process, one becomes completely detached from all material activities. One who can thus situate himself in the Brahma Jyoti, or the different varieties of the Brahman conception, is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the 3 modes of material nature. So one thing to note is that this first quarter of verse, Brahmanohi pratishtaham, is often quoted as a counter-argument to the Mayavadis. Because they say that just the opposite, that Krishna is resting on the Brahman, that he's derivative of the Brahman. If you want to really get to the ultimate reality, you'll go to Brahman, knowledge. But Krishna directly counteracts that here. There's no other meaning that can be screwed out of this line, Brahmanohi pratishtaham. I am the basis, pratishta, of the Brahman effulgence. So, we want to rise up to that platform, but we don't want to merge into Brahman. We certainly don't want to merge into Krishna. And from the beginning of the Gita, the eternal individuality of the soul is emphasized. The second verse Krishna speaks has a long purport. It's also countered the Mayavadis. Natve vaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadipa natchaiva nabhavishyava sarve vayamatak param. Never was a time that I did not exist, nor you. There were all these soldiers on the battlefield. And in the future, we exist now, and in the future we'll continue to exist in individual form. So that's a very important counter-argument to the Mayavadis, who always talk about merging. But understanding, our nature, I mean, the first thing that I learned when I joined the ashram, you're not that body, and what am I? Aham Brahmasmi. I'm Brahman, Not the Supreme Brahman, but I am spirit. And that's a, something we shouldn't forget, because when we tend to deviate, it means that we're falling back into the bodily concept of life. So that's why Krishna consciousness is full of engagement for the mind, the intelligence, the senses. If you want to be engaged, you can be engaged all the time, and that will keep you. It'll take you beyond the modes of nature and keep you beyond the modes of nature. But we always have that little independence, and from any stage, that's why the lesson of Bharat Maharaj was so significant. Bharat was the great king who meditated. He left home at an early age, unlike many of the other kings you read about in the Bhagavatam who left at an elderly age. He was very young. There's a kind of hard-hitting verse. What was that? I forget it. Sudad Raja Vidispisha, Joho Yuvaiva Malabad Uttama Shloka Ladasa. Oh, Yo Dustyajan Dadasutan, Sudad Raja Vidispisha. Jehoyavaiva Malabad Uttama Shloka Ladasa. Dustyajan means very difficult to give up. Especially in the bloom of youth. He had a kingdom, he had a beautiful queen, he had one or more children. And Dadasutan, Sudad Raj, Sudad, it's in your heart, all these things are in your heart. Vidispisha is touching your heart. Jehoyavaiva Malabad, he said, strong language. He gave it up just as one gives up stool after passing it. Uttama Shloka Ladasa, being very eager for Krishna, Uttama Shloka. But still, he was meditating, and he had reached the bhava stage. He was immersed, in meditative bhakti yoga. But you know the story. The deer came, the fawn. Maybe you never read that. Hey, new candidate to hear this nice story. 5th canto. So he's out there meditating, and by a river, very idyllic, this little stream. And suddenly he hears a big roar of a lion, breaks his meditation. And there's this lion running after, or is it a tiger, I forget. He's running after this deer, pregnant deer. And she's running to the river, because she knows by instinct that the lion won't jump in the river. I guess they don't swim at all. So she gets to the river and just gets out of his clutches, she swims across, you can imagine the anxiety, she's pregnant, So she gets to the other bank and collapses, and her fawn comes out, but she dies. So now you have this helpless little fawn, and there's Bharat Maharaj seeing this whole scene. So like any human being, what to speak of a devotee, of course he wants to try to help this fawn. So he takes the fawn, back to his little hut, and feeds it, gives it a little milk somehow. And so the fawn doesn't know anything of any mother except him. She's completely dependent. So it describes, he's meditating, the fawn is nibbling on his ear, it's time for some milk. And then the fawn is, so that's the distraction. Then the fawn is gone, then he's thinking about the fawn. How's the fawn doing? Maybe he got into dangers. So basically he becomes completely distracted. And eventually the fawn dies. No, he dies. And he's thinking of the fawn. So he becomes back as a deer. So he's a deer, but he was so advanced he remembered the previous life. That can happen. So he doesn't get all into deer activities. He hangs out near an ashram and listens to the Krishna Katha, till he leaves that deer body. So then he's born as a Brahmin, in a Brahmin family. But he's remembered all 3 births, so this time he said, I'm not going to get entangled at all. So he acts dumb. That's why he's known as Jada Bart. Jada means can't speak, just... So, okay, they give him a job, taking care of the cows, watching, because he's very strongly built, So he's watching over the cows, make sure they don't get out, they're safe. So along come some Kali worshippers who are looking for a human sacrifice. You heard about this part? No? So he looks like a great candidate. First of all, he's healthy, young, and he's not too bright, they think. And so they just take him along, and he's completely, it's like completely Dira. He's like, whatever happens. So he goes with them. And, so the next scene is they're in their Kali temple, and they have this big murti of Kali with numerous arms and the skulls hanging around, fierce. And so they're getting ready to sacrifice him. They wash him nicely, they give him a nice meal, I guess is a part of the ritual. And they're getting ready to do the sacrifice, and Kali becomes angry, because she's a Vaishnava. So she says, she comes out of the statue, and I think she's got her friends with her, and she chops off their heads, all the worshippers. And there's a painting of it, and there's Bharat just, looking on. He's not involved. So he survives that. And eventually he goes back to Godhead. But it's a lesson for us. It's a lesson for us. And that is that he was at such a high stage. Prabhupada said he's at the Bhava stage, just before Prema. That one can get deviated by attraction, affection for anything in this world. And that can, disrupt your spiritual life. So that's why it says in the previous verse, avyabhicharena, means without deviation. That is what really can take you out of the modes of nature and fix you on the Brahman stage, which is described here. And really this is, if someone is on the Brahman stage, the pure devotees are on that stage. That's described in so many places in the Bhagavad Gita. They're tolerant, they're merciful, full of knowledge, unshakable in their faith and activities. There's so many symptoms. So that's what's being described here. Now, I don't know if you noticed it, but Prabhupada referred to the same verse that I spoke on, I think, this morning. This one, Aruha Kutrena. You know the verse. That the demigods, you gave the question, the demigods are praying for Krishna in the womb. Prabhupada is again referring to that verse. Intelligence is not perfectly clear. In the Bhagavatam, it's stated at the end of the first paragraph on page 589. Although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman without going further with no information of the Supreme Person, his intelligence is not perfectly avashuddha buddhaya. So that's the danger of getting too involved with the impersonal Brahman, is that there's an element of envy there of Krishna, because recognizing Krishna as the supreme Param Brahman means recognizing ourselves as eternally subordinate. And if that false ego is still present, then you can't really engage in bhakti yoga. But being just in Brahman is not satisfying to the soul. Aruha Krichena Param Padam. Param Padam is this Brahman. It's a transcendental position. Patantyadho. They fall down again because the living entity has a form and activities and a relationship with Krishna. That's eternal. It's hidden now from us. But just going to Brahman realization does not fulfill that. The soul is still looking for activity. And if you can't get it in Brahman, there's no variety, you'll come down here, open hospitals, whatever, So that's the danger of that. And then it quoted this, I think I quoted this, Rasa Vaisa, that Krishna himself is Rasa. But this part is next, Rasam Yevayam Labdvanandi Bhavati. This is us. If we can regain our relationship with Krishna, we can revive our Ananda position. Anandi. Anandi is a noun describing someone who's in Ananda. And so that's the whole philosophy is right there in that one line. Krishna is full of rasa. He is enjoying all kinds of relationships. We have that relationship. We have one of those relationships. We've forgotten it. To regain it means to again experience this full taste of loving exchange with Krishna and to be situated in bliss. You can pray for that. There's a verse. Well, I brought this, so here. We played this earlier. You don't need to jump. Nanda nanda napadada bindayo. Nanda nanda napadada bindayo. Syannamana makadanda bindava. Sindava padamasaukisam padam nandiyantu vidiyam mamanisham. So he says, "Oh Nanda Nandana, beloved son of Nanda Maharaj, from your lotus feet, from the lotus of your feet is trickling this makaranda, which is the nectar of pleasure of serving the lotus feet. Nanda Nandana padada vindayo syannamana makaranda bindava, little drops of nectar. But those bindava, that's the word drops, are not actually bindava, sindava. Sindava means oceans. Of Padama Saukya Sampadam, of the treasure of the highest happiness of bliss of love of God." So then the last line says, "Nandiyantu vidiyam mamanisham." O Lord, may I always enjoy this service to your lotus feet eternally. Nandiyantu vidiyam mamanisham, without day and night, without stopping. So we can pray for that situation in devotional service. Please let all of the impediments be cleared away so that I can serve you with undeviating mind. That's a good prayer for us. Okay, any comments from our audience? Well, no one's monitoring. You got him? At least we should get Tapas. What is Tapas's opinion? Is he out there? Anyway, we appear to be having some technical difficulties. But Tapas, if you are out there, please accept my humble obeisance. Okay. What does he say?
So,
who?
Prakash
Yes.
says, "Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for the class."
Thank you, Prakash. You're welcome.
And that's it.
That's it? Okay. That's all we need. As long as there's one person happy. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.